Have you ever noticed how the silence of someone you love can feel louder than words? Maybe you're a parent who's poured years, decades into raising your kids. You sacrificed, you showed up, you gave them everything you could, and now things feel different. They've grown, they've moved on, and somewhere along the way, the calls became less frequent, the visits stopped. The energy you once shared now feels like it's just hanging there unanswered. There's a certain kind of stillness that fills the room when someone who used to be close suddenly isn't. And for many parents in their 60s, 70s, or even 80s, that silence can be hard to understand, especially when it comes from your own children. But here's the truth that often goes unsaid: when you stop coming back, when you stop calling, texting, or reaching out first, it doesn't just go unnoticed, it shifts something in them too. In this video, we're going to walk through a very real, emotional journey, what your kids go through when you stop returning. It may surprise you to learn that it's not just indifference or forgetfulness. There's a whole emotional process underneath the surface, and understanding it might just bring you peace in the silence you're sitting with. So let's begin. At first, your absence is a surprise. Not a dramatic one, not loud or chaotic, just a quiet, unexpected shift. They assume you'll call, they assume you'll check in, send a message, pop up in their life the way you always have. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, because that's the pattern they've come to rely on. But when you don't, when the days stretch on without a word, a subtle panic sets in. Not the kind they show openly, but the kind that keeps them up at night, reaching for their phone just to check. There's no message, no call, nothing. It's like watching a movie that cuts to black before the ending. That's the first stage, the shock of your absence. They scroll through photos, maybe reread old messages, wondering what's changed. Surely they're just busy, they think. Surely dad or mum will reach out soon. But the silence lingers, and it's in that stillness that something deeper begins to stir. A confrontation with their own pride, because for a long time, they may have taken your presence for granted. They knew you'd always reach out, you always made the effort, you always checked in. Now, with each passing day of silence, they find themselves in unfamiliar territory. Their pride, the one that said they'll always come back, is being tested. In this stage, ego meets silence, and ego doesn't like silence. It feeds on attention, on proof that it still matters. They might post something they think will catch your eye. A subtle hint, a memory, a message crafted not for their friends, but for you. And when there's no reaction, no like, no call, no comment, they start to feel that silence more sharp. It's not just your absence, it's what it represents. That maybe you're not sitting by the phone like you used to, that maybe you've moved on from being the one who always gives, who always initiates. Suddenly, their ego, which once held on to the comfort of your steady presence, begins to crack. They start to wonder, did I do something wrong? Did I push too far? Have I misjudged their value in my life? And just like that, what began as quiet confidence starts to shift into quiet discomfort. At first, they tell themselves they're just curious, but curiosity has a way of turning into something deeper, something harder to shake. They begin to check your profile more often. They look for clues. Are you active? Are you happy? Are you engaging with others, but not with them? This is when curiosity turns into restlessness, and restlessness doesn't like silence either. It wants answers. It wants certainty. But your silence doesn't give them either. So their mind starts spinning. It fills in the blanks with all kinds of stories. Maybe they're upset. Maybe they've just moved. Maybe they've finally stopped needing me. They replay your last conversations, scanning for clues they missed. Did they overlook something? Were there signs? You see, people often assume that being the one who steps away means you've disappeared. But in reality, you've become the center of a storm they can't quite escape. Because when someone who used to need you becomes still, calm, quiet, unattached, it leaves behind an unsettling vacuum. And into that vacuum flows every thought they tried to avoid. They start to compare not just who you were with them, but who you seem to be now, without them. Maybe they notice changes in you, your tone, your energy, even your appearance. You seem more focused, more grounded, maybe even stronger, and that comparison begins to sting. They remember the version of you who always gave, always offered help, always showed up. The you who bent to keep the peace. The you who called first, apologized first, cared first. Now they see someone who isn't reaching, who isn't reacting, who isn't circling their world anymore. It's not bitterness you're showing, it's restraint, and the contrast is hard to ignore. Because, while they may not say it out loud, deep down they feel it. The person who once made them feel secure has stepped back, and the silence is holding. This is when the weight of comparison settles in, and it's not just comparing you to your past self, it's comparing you to others, because no one replaces that quiet, grounded presence of a parent who cared deeply, but now no longer chases. They notice the difference, even if they can't explain it. So they hide their discomfort. They keep smiling, posting, talking like nothing's changed. But regret doesn't always come with a big breakdown. Sometimes it just sits there in the pauses, in the drafts they never send, in the messages they type out and delete. They want to say something, maybe even reach out, but that voice in their head, their pride says, wait, hold back, don't admit anything. Still that feeling grows, because they start to feel something they didn't expect, unspoken regret. Not because of anything you said, not because you punished them, but because your silence, the peace you've chosen, reflects something back to them, a truth they may not be ready to face. That, maybe, just maybe, they didn't value you when you were right there. And now that you're not, that presence, your steady, loving, sometimes overly giving presence is gone. They feel it, not in loud moments, but in the quiet ones. At night, in their thoughts, they scroll, hoping to see a sign. They wait for that familiar buzz, but the screen stays dark, and so they sit with it, not ready to reach out, but unable to let go. Because the truth is, your silence is not a punishment, it's a boundary. It says, I will no longer pour into what doesn't pour back. I choose, and that choice, quiet as it is, speaks louder than anything else ever could. That quiet choice you've made, to stop chasing, to stop reaching, to stop ending just to keep the connection alive, begins to take root, not only in your life, but in theirs. And even though they won't say it, they feel the shift more, with each passing day. Because as time moves on, your silence doesn't fade, it deepens. It becomes something they can't quite ignore. And that's when it really begins to sink in. This might be permanent. At first they thought you were just upset, maybe just pulling back for a little while to cool off, or to make a point. Time was on their side, that eventually things would go back to the way they were. But now the days are turning into weeks, and the weeks into months, and still you haven't come back. This is the moment when time becomes the enemy, because time, something they once felt so sure of, starts to reveal a deeper truth. You haven't just gone quiet, you've chosen this stillness. You've chosen not to return, and every day that goes by without a message or a call, the realization sets in more clearly. You're not waiting anymore. You're not sitting by the phone. You're not watching their feed. You're not caught in the same loop of hoping or needing. You've stepped out of it, and the calmness in your step tells them everything they need to know, even if they don't want to admit it. They might distract themselves. They may stay busy, fill their schedule, go out, laugh, post pictures with friends. But in the quiet, when the noise dies down, it's still there, that uncomfortable truth, whispering beneath the surface. You're not coming back. And that, more than anything, is what begins to hurt. So what do? They start trying things. Little things at first. A sudden like on something of yours. A comment, a picture posted just for attention. A subtle lyric in a story. Maybe even a message that says everything and nothing at all. These aren't accidents. They're attempts to reclaim control. They're trying to feel out where you stand, to see if they can still pull a reaction from you. Because if they can get a response, any response, then maybe they still matter in your world. It's not always conscious, but it's real. That extra effort in the photo they post, the timing of a message that feels just a bit too perfect, a conversation with someone you both know that just so happens to make its way back to you. All of it comes from a place of wanting to know, do I still have a hold on them? But you don't bite. You've stepped off the stage. You're no longer performing in that play. And the more they try to regain your attention, the more your silence says, I see you, but I'm not playing anymore. That silence becomes more than stillness. It becomes strength. Because here's where something powerful starts to take shape. You've let go. Not with bitterness, not with anger, just release. You're no longer clinging to what was. You're not waiting for an apology. You're not hoping they'll change. You've accepted what is, and in that acceptance, you've found freedom. This is the power of detachment. Detachment is not about giving up on people. It's not coldness. It's not pretending you don't care. It's simply the quiet, steady decision to stop holding on to something that no longer holds you. And that kind of peace, it can't be faked. When most people pull away, they still check back. They wait for a signal, a response. But you've stopped waiting. You're not frozen. You're building. You're growing. You're filling your life with purpose, not longing. And the more they sense that you're not just gone, but at peace in your going, the harder it becomes for them to process. Because deep down, they hoped your silence was temporary. They hoped your detachment was just a phase. But now they see it. It's not a phase. It's who you've become. And with that comes the realization that hits deeper than almost anything else. They lost you, and you're not trying to be found. That thought lingers, especially in the quiet moments, especially when they think back to everything you shared, the conversations, the support, the times when your presence was their safe place. They don't just miss you, they miss who they were when you were there. This is when the echo of what could have been begins to sound. It's not just the past they're thinking about, it's the future that will never happen. The birthdays you won't attend, the holidays that feel different now, the milestones you won't be a part of, the potential closeness that's now out of reach. And that echo, it doesn't go away easily, because it's not based on fantasy, it's based on what was possible, but now no longer is. They begin to play the what-if game. What if they had responded differently? What if they had valued your presence more? What if they had just said what they really felt before it was too late? But what if doesn't bring people back. It doesn't erase time. It doesn't undo distance. It just sits there, an open door that never gets walked through, a story that never gets a final chapter. And while they're stuck in that loop of wondering, of wishing, of imagining, you're walking forward, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. You understand now that your peace, your energy, your emotional well-being, they're not something to be handed over for temporary comfort. They're your responsibility, and you've chosen to guard them, even if it means walking away from people you once would have done anything for. Because in the end, what you're really showing, without shouting, without proving, without posting, is the deepest kind of strength. Peace is your victory. It's not loud. It doesn't look like a trophy or a finish line, but it's the kind of victory that changes you from the inside out. You've stopped chasing love that isn't mutual. You've stopped begging for understanding. You've stopped handing over your heart to people who didn't know what to do with it. And that peace, that calm you now carry, that is the reward for every time you stayed silent instead of snapping, walked away instead of clinging, and chose stillness instead of chaos. They feel it, even if they don't speak it, because nothing is louder than a person who used to need you now standing in their own strength. And now, they are the one who feels the absence. They are the one who checks their phone. They are the one wondering. And you've become the quiet proof that healing doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go. You've let go not because you were weak, not because you didn't care, but because you finally understood the cost of carrying something that no longer carried you. And the most powerful part, you didn't need to slam the door, post a final message, or make a dramatic exit. You just stopped showing up where your presence wasn't respected. You stepped back. You stopped explaining. You chose peace over performance. Now they sit in the quiet you left behind, and they start to feel something unfamiliar. Not just regret, but something more personal. They feel the mirror of loss. Because when they look around now,
They don't just see the absence of your voice or your text messages. They start seeing themselves differently. They notice what's missing, not in their life, but in the steadiness, the encouragement, the unconditional support they used to have in you. It's no longer there, and no one else quite fills that space. At first, they may try to replace you with new people, new conversations, new distractions. But over time, they begin to recognize that no matter how many new faces come around, none of them feel like you did. The warmth you offered, the quiet strength, the patience, the way you gave even when it wasn't always returned. And in those little comparisons, when someone else talks too loud, or is too distracted, or doesn't really listen, they remember the comfort you gave without asking for anything in return. They remember how your presence was steady, not flashy, how you loved without needing to be noticed. That's the part that stays with them, because you see, the world is full of noise, but few people bring peace. And when someone has lived with that peace and loses it, the contrast is sharp. It's not about missing someone in theory. It's about feeling the difference in real life. And here's the thing, they won't always tell you this. Pride may keep them from saying the words, but that doesn't mean the realization isn't there. It lingers, it follows them into the quiet, and it grows heavier with time. That's the truth about silence. It gives people the space to meet themselves, and not everyone likes what they find.
While you've been moving forward, they've been circling the path, not because you asked them to, but because you left a mark, a quiet one, a respectful one, but a mark nonetheless. And that's where something interesting happens. They start to feel the weight of something else. The time that's been lost, time they thought they'd always have, time they assumed they could use to fix things later, time they believed was just waiting for the right moment. But as you know, time doesn't wait, and eventually the realization comes. There may not be a late. That feeling grows each time another day passes without hearing from you. Each time they hesitate to reach out but still don't. Each time they scroll past your name in their contacts and do nothing, because now they're not sure how to reach you. Not in the physical sense, but emotionally, or not in the same place anymore. They can sense it. You've changed. You've grown. You've detached. And here's what hits the hardest for them. You've detached without closing your heart. You're still kind, still open to love, still living with integrity. You haven't become bitter or resentful. You've simply stopped begging for closeness from those who weren't willing to meet you there. That kind of peace is powerful and rare, because it shows you've moved on with grace, not anger. And now, when they think of you, they don't just think of the parent they used to know. They think of the person you've become, stronger, wiser, softer even, but no longer soft for them. You've protected your peace long enough that it's no longer fragile. It's solid, it's rooted. And in that stillness, you've become untouchable. Not untouchable in the sense that you can't be reached, but in the sense that you can no longer be shaken. That's the kind of presence that leaves an echo. So while they may never say, "I'm sorry," or "I miss you," or "I wish I had treated you better," their actions will speak. The hesitation when your name comes up, the pause before they speak of you, the look in their eye when a photo brings back memories. They're thinking about you, and not just about who you were, but about what could have been. That thought, the one that whispers, "Maybe we could have had something more," doesn't go away easily. It's the echo of a future that never happened, a conversation that never took place, a healing that never arrived. It lives in the silent moments, in the in-between, in the things they now wish they had done differently. But while they sit with the weight of what could have been, you're not there anymore. You're here, in the now, in the peace you chose, in the life you're continuing to build. And that's what this is really about. You didn't pull away out of punishment. You didn't go silent to get revenge. You stepped away because your soul needed space. Your peace needed air. Your heart needed rest. You stopped pouring into people who only held out their hands when they needed something. You stopped trying to force love into places that wouldn't receive it. and you began to reclaim the most precious thing you'll ever have, your energy. You've learnt now that peace is not passive. It's intentional. It takes strength to hold your ground without defending it. It takes courage to say nothing even when your heart wants to explain. And it takes incredible discipline to stay silent, not out of pride, but out of respect for your own well-being. So where does that leave you? Right where you belong. Whole, grounded, focused. You've become living proof that growth doesn't always look like a loud comeback or a flashy reinvention. Sometimes it looks like quiet mornings, steady routines, stronger boundaries, and soft hearts protected by strong walls. And when people see that, when they see a parent who stopped chasing but never stopped loving, it leaves a different kind of impression, one that lingers, one that inspires, because deep down, we all want to believe that we're worth returning to, that if someone steps away, they'll come back. But you didn't. Not because you stopped loving, but because you finally started loving yourself just as much. That's the lesson, that's the legacy. And for the people who once took your presence for granted, your absence has become a teacher. It teaches them what your presence used to provide. It shows them the value of what they lost. And most importantly, it reveals what was always true. You didn't leave to hurt them. You left to heal yourself. And that's your greatest victory. The victory of self-respect. The quiet, steady, unwavering victory of choosing yourself.